Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to register your own domain name and connect that domain with your own server. We're going to get the server from Digitalocean, which is a hosting provider, but I'll show you some other options as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a virtual private server. So what that is basically you have your own kind of like computer, your own server in the cloud that you can use to host your own domains, your own websites, and have your own personalized, individual domain name. For whatever you want, whether it be something that interests you, some kind of project, something for work, host your resume, what have you. So it's going to be a very basic video compared to my other videos where they're a little more technical, more programming and engineering related. This is more just accessible to everyone, anyone who wants to set up their own website with their own domain name. I find this is the best way to do it because you have total control. Got your own little server up in the cloud, and you basically control all access to it. So first thing you got to do is you got to find a domain that interests you. It's probably the hardest thing of this whole process is to come up with a name. I've already got one that I kind of found that I like, which is sinister.life. You'll notice .life is one of the newer what you call top level domains. So TLDs, top level domain. And so what that is, that's like .com, .org, .net. Those are the most popular ones that you see every day. Those ones have been around the longest. There's a whole bunch of different top-level domains, and something like .life is new. So it's a lot easier to find something relevant to your interest or something that you find kind of neat that you can register in that domain, in that top-level domain space that hasn't been taken already. Whereas it's, if you try to find one in .com, .net, or .org, it's going to be much harder. So I've decided on sinister.life. So what I'll do is I'm going to search it to see if it's available. Now I've already registered this ahead of time, so it's going to show as not available. But I'll show you kind of what happens, what to expect when you try to register a domain. And you'll notice I'm using Namecheap. You can use any other registrar or hosting company you want. I like Namecheap. Never had an issue with them. As they say, they are cheap. They're pretty cheap. And they have been easy to use and stable for me. So you see it comes back here and it shows sinister.life. It says make offer. What that means is someone else has it, and you can actually make an offer to buy it from them. As I told you, I've already registered this previously, so I already got that. But the name that you choose, if it's available, it'll show up something like this. It'll give you a price per year, and you can just add it to cart. You'll notice here, sinister.store is $6.70 a year Canadian. For the first year, it's special, and every year after that, it's $67.14. I mean, either way, it's still pretty cheap when you think about it. $67 to have for the domain for the next year. I mean, you're talking like $6 a month, or less, $5 a month, a little over 5. So what I do is, I get them for the year, and if I actually do anything meaningful or any kind of project on it that's, maybe got some traffic or something I like, then I'll renew it for the next year. But for now, you only gotta make a year commitment, $6, no big deal. Add to cart, view cart, and then check it out. Now, once you purchase it, you'll sign into your Namecheap account like this. So for you, you'll be registering an account first and then buying the domain. I've already got my account created, so I sign in, and you can see all my domains here. And the one we just purchased, sinister.life, is right here. It tells you when they're expiring. So this one's going to expire soon, but I don't need it anymore, so that will be gone as of November 21st. That was something I registered last year for my girlfriend to set up a kind of an online Christmas present for her. And so again, I used it for 1 year. I think the .online cost me like $2 or $3. So I mean, it was really cheap. Whereas the .ca and .org cost a little more. Nowadays, I've had these for years, so they cost like 30 something to renew. But so we want to manage sinister.life, the manage button. And that brings you here to these options, and the one we really care about is name servers. And yours is going to be set to Namecheap Basic DNS when you first log into it, because you're not going to have any of your own name servers to specify. And so what your name server is, the name server basically is the authoritative control of that domain. And what that is if anyone ever needs to know that where the IP address associated with your domain, they've got to get that from the domain server, the name server. Sorry. Now to get some name servers, we're gonna actually create a server at DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean, like I said, is a hosting provider. They have like dedicated servers, or as we're gonna do, virtual private servers. So what a virtual private server is basically is they've got a really big, expensive piece of hardware, and they partition out basically the hardware in such a way that you've got multiple systems on the same server. So you share the hardware basically, but it acts as your own server. You got full access to it, full root access. You can run a web server, FTP, whatever you want on it. It's just like your own computer in the cloud. It's pretty awesome, and I mean, they have plans ranging from $5 to like $700 a month, depending on which kind of power you need. For us, the $5 one will be plenty. And if you don't want DigitalOcean, there's actually a website you can check out to get some better deals if you want to look into that. It's called lowendbox.com. And this website is basically dedicated to finding, low-end, cheap server deals out there, whether it's VPS or dedicated or what have you. And it looks like they're down possibly, which is weird. Try one more time. Seems to be loading this time. Okay. So yeah, lowendbox.com, and it'll give you, looking for cheap VPS. So again, VPS is a virtual private server, and it gives you location. So it's best to choose one close to you or close to where you plan to serve your customers or what have you. I'm in Canada, so I would go here. Gives you a bunch of offers. Look them over. Like these are just a bunch of different companies. These are smaller companies. Like I say, DigitalOcean is one of the biggest companies available out there, in this space. But you can find a whole bunch of different companies, and some offer you as cheap as like $1 a year for a server. Now, obviously for $1 a year, I mean, you got to realize it's probably not going to be very stable. But again, if you don't want to use DigitalOcean, come check out this. Maybe find something more suited to your preferences. But in my experience, DigitalOcean is extremely stable. I've never had any issue with them. They're extremely, they're big, and they're something that they're trustworthy. At least in my experience. All right, so I've already got a server created on DigitalOcean, but for this video, I'm going to create a second server. So for you, when you actually set up your account in DigitalOcean, it'll prompt you for the server that you want to create during your setup, during the registration process. But since I've already got an account, I can just go to Create, Droplets. Droplets is what DigitalOcean calls their servers. It's a cloud server. It's a cute little name, I guess. So we'll click that. I don't think I clicked it. And it should give me an option. Yeah. So the first option you have in terms of your server is what operating system you want to run on it. It's pretty much all Linux except for the one FreeBSD option. I'm just going to choose Ubuntu, and you can choose different versions as well. But I'm going to stick to 16.04. 64-bit, which I believe is the current stable. Then you choose a size. For this project, I'm going to put up a little blog. The only thing I'm going to put up today is like just a little web page just to make sure it works. And for that, the $5 a month, you get half a gig of RAM, 20 gigabytes of solid state drive, and a terabyte of transfer. That's more than enough for a little blog for us for this video. Then the data center region, choose something close to you. To reduce latency when you're interacting with your server. I'll choose Toronto because I'm in Canada. For additional options, you can read what each one of them does. For me though, I only choose monitoring, which gives you extra metrics and graphing, and you can set alerts depending on how much traffic there is and what have you. I'm not going to add SSH keys. I'm just going to use a password for now. But it's something I'll explain in future videos about how to add your SSH keys and how to go passwordless and just use SSH keys for your access. Hostname, I'm going to call it sinister.life. And we will only want one, and we'll create. And it should take about 40 seconds to create the server. And you can see the progress bar in the middle of the screen. And I mean, basically what it's doing now is it's actually, installing our operating system, partitioning off part of the hardware, giving us, half a gig of RAM, 20 gigs of space, and setting up Ubuntu on that for us. So there it is, all done. You can see here it gives you your IP address. So that's a static IP address that'll never change during the life of your server. So we'll copy that. And the first thing we'll do is go to add a domain, because we want to associate our new domain with this server. This is the host name, don't mistake that, even though it's going to be the same name. This is the actual domain that we're associating with this server. If I click add domain, so I'm basically adding this domain onto this server. And all it really does is it will create what's called a DNS zone file, which is this right here, and it puts in 4 DNS records. So DNS records have different types of records. What we have here is 3 NS types and 1 A type. The A type is probably the most important record, in that what it does is it will convert a host name into an IP address. So this IP address is where our server lives, right? This is the IP address that connects to our server. But it's hard to remember that IP address for everyday users. You don't want to say, where's your website, and you give them that number. Everyone today knows that you give a host name, and that's how the web works. So you say, my website's sinister.life, much easier to remember, and that gets translated by DNS into our IP address, which leads to our server. These records are your name server records, and all it does is saying basically, if anyone ever needs to look up any kind of records for a sinister.life domain, they'll go to these name servers. Now, in order to actually finish this and finalize it, we've got to actually add these name servers to our domain under Namecheap. So for that, we'll change Namecheap basic DNS to custom DNS. We'll add those 3 servers, and there's 3 of them just for redundancy in case one goes down. And now I've got all these 3 listed as my name server. So now anybody looking up my domain knows to contact these name servers to get information about any kind of IP address that it may want. One other record that I also add to this is a Cname, which is an alias for www. It will be an alias of sinister.life. Create record. So what that does is basically, if someone goes to www.sinister.life, our name server, ns1digitalocean.com, which is the authoritative name server for sinister.life domain, will then see that that's an alias for sinister.life, and it will then get the A record for sinister.life, which points to this IP address, which is where our server lives. So now that the domain and the DNS is set up at this point, so that is actually where our server is. And all we've got to do now is we're going to quickly set up Apache, and Apache is an HTTP server software that runs, the majority of the internet nowadays, and that's what you use to host your web pages, and it will serve web pages for you. So we're going to actually first, we need a password. What happens whenever you actually create a server with DigitalOcean, it'll email you your root password, and you have to change it once you log into it. So we should have it here. If I go get messages, there it is. So there's my root password. I've got the IP address copied already. I'm going to use PuTTY, which is an SSH client. There we go. And this will allow me to log into our new server. So I'm going to log in as root, and we've got the password here. So you see here, once you first log into your new server for the first time, it'll prompt you to change the password. So you put in the current password and then create a new one. And so at this point, you're actually on your server. So you can see we've got 512 megs of RAM and 20 gig disk space. Just like we got the plan that we signed up for. And now what you want to do is you want to install Apache. So for that, for Ubuntu, they use the apt-get packet manager. So it's like apt-get install Apache 2. I usually use Arch Linux, so I'm not really too familiar with it, but this should do it. It does. So what it's telling us here is basically these additional packages will be installed it fixes any kind of conflicts, and it adds any kind of dependencies that the package needs. So do you want to continue? Yes. Should be pretty quick. Now, once it's done, I believe it should automatically run Apache for us. Let's check it out. Yeah, it does. Let me just maximize this screen. Let me clear it and try it again. So you can see Apache running. There's actually 3 processes, and that first one run by root, you don't have to worry. It's actually not running as root. Well, it is, but anyone connecting to your web server will get a child process that's owned by www data. It's not owned by root. It has to run the parent process under root so they can bind to ports 80 and 443, anything under port 1000. So that is running, so that's good. Now let's connect to our website. One thing to notice as well is once you set your DNS up, it can sometimes take up to 48 hours to propagate. What that means is like 48 hours before it's actually, anywhere around the world will actually can translate this into your IP address. Sometimes it can take up to a couple hours. For me with Digitalocean, it's usually pretty quick. I'm pretty sure it's going to be already resolving now for me. But if it doesn't resolve right away for you, you'll have to use the IP address until it does start resolving, which again, it can take up to 2 days, but usually it's much quicker. So yeah, mine's already resolving for me. Again, just because it resolves for me doesn't mean it resolves for anyone else around the world. It can take up to like 48 hours for it to completely be resolvable everywhere. So you see here, Apache 2 Ubuntu default page, it works. Basically means we just installed Apache 2. That's simple, super simple. Gives you some good information here to read about Apache as well. Tells you where different configuration files are, and it's a good read. For now though, what we're going to do, and actually one of the most important things is your document root. Your document root is essentially where Apache looks to find your HTML pages. So when you actually write some HTML or set up your own web page, it should be placed under /var/www /public HTML. So what we're gonna do is let's just make a change just to make sure it actually works, which it should. So if I go /var/www/html, so there's that index that we just saw on the web. That's the default. And if I was to just move that, call it index.old, index.old.html, and then I create my own index.html, because by default anything called index.html or index.php is served first as the root. So let's just say hello world, no HTML, just hello world, which should display as text. So if it's working, we've now made we made a web page, if you call it a web page, on our server, and if I now refresh it through a browser on my actual home computer, it should show the changes. So you can see now hello world. So essentially, within the space of 15 minutes, we've set up our own domain name, registered our own domain name, purchased a server in the cloud, connected the DNS and the name servers all together so we can actually resolve our domain name to our server, and then installed Apache to serve web pages, and then create a simple hello world web page. So from here, it's all about developing something more. Whether it's like a page for your resume, a page to display projects, just messing around with Linux. I mean, you don't even have to use your server for serving web pages. If you want to just use it as like a place where you can mess around with programming, Linux stuff, FTP servers, whatever you want, you can do that too. In the coming tutorials, I'll show you how to secure your server. I'll show you how to install different applications to do some programming. We'll look into more installing PHP modules for Apache, so we can write PHP code with our server or on the server and serve PHP websites and that kind of stuff. But this just served as a kind of intro, very basic for anyone who really wasn't aware of how to do that, how to get your own domain and how to connect to your own server. Now you can for a total of $8 initial investment, and then $5 a month thereafter for the server. And of course, if a couple months from now you don't really want the server anymore, no big deal. You can cancel it, and you still have your domain for the year. And so you can always just cancel and decide when you want to use the domain later on within that that full first year. So hopefully it was informative to anyone who's super new to I guess the web in general, and serves for help you do some programming and projects and throw them up online for people to check out. Thanks and have a good day.